Welcome to the bottom of the rabbit hole. Salute to all the Matrix University subscribers tuning in. You are appreciated. In this video, we are going to talk about Captain Ballard, aka Roy Jones Jr., the fighter of the decade in the 90s. And I'll also share my reaction to the Tyson vs. Jones exhibition fight. So if this is your first time down here, or you simply want to know everything about the Matrix universe, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you do not miss out on any future yellow-pilled content. Many of the Matrixologists here know Roy Jones Jr. as Captain Ballard from The Matrix Reloaded, but some of you may not know about Roy Jones Jr. the boxer and why his cameo in both Reloaded and the Enter the Matrix video game was kind of a big deal. Born January 16, 1969, Roy LaVesta Jones Jr. is a former American professional boxer, boxing commentator, trainer, rapper, and actor who holds dual American and Russian citizenship. In September 2015, Vladimir Putin signed a decree to grant citizenship to Jones so that he could fight and do business freely in Russia. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Roy Jones Jr. was born into boxing tradition. His father, Roy Jones Sr., was also a middleweight boxer who fought Marvin Hagler as an undercard fight on June 10, 1977, losing by knockout in the third round. Roy Jones Jr. won the 1984 United States National Junior Olympics, the 1986 and 1987 United States National Golden Gloves, and ended his amateur career with a 121-13 record. Jones Jr. represented the United States at the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games as the youngest member of the U.S. Olympic boxing team, where he won the silver medal in a very controversial 2-3 decision, despite pummeling Park Si-hun for 3 rounds. Jones landed 86 punches to Park's mere 32. Even though the offending judges were wined and dined by South Korean organizers, an investigation ruled there was no evidence of corruption, and this decision is known to many as the biggest fix in Olympic history. As a professional, Jones Jr. has a record of 66 wins and 9 losses. He started his career with 17 consecutive knockouts, held titles at middleweight, super middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight. He was the first former middleweight champion to capture the heavyweight title since Bob Fitzsimmons in 1897, 106 years prior. And the Boxing Writers Association of America named him as the fighter of the decade for the 90s. Other nicknames include Superman and Captain Hook. Jones was known for his unique and unorthodox fighting style that defied many of boxing's oldest traditions. His style relied heavily on his great hand speed, quickness, reflexes, ring IQ, and knockout power, which were often deciding factors in most of his fights during his prime. His incredible hand speed allowed him to throw hooks in rapid succession, hence the name Captain Hook, but he would also mix it up with a variety of punches to keep his opponents guessing. Jones' style often left him with his hands down and relying on head movement to evade his opponent's punches. He used cat-like reflexes to bob and weave, slip, and counter his opponent. Jones was a master at this improvised style and used it to his advantage by sticking his chin out to bait his opponents into hitting him, only to pull back and then counter the off-balance opponent with his own punches. For a lack of a better phrase, Roy Jones Jr. was using bullet time in boxing before bullet time was even a thing. That's what made his casting in The Matrix Reloaded such a perfect match. Like Dan Davis in the Animatrix episode World Record, Jones Jr. in his prime was doing things other fighters couldn't do at a speed other fighters couldn't match. Now, The Matrix Reloaded wasn't the first time Roy Jones appeared on the big screen. His film debut was during the 1996 World Championship match, where Jones defeated Bryant Brannon in the second round, and that event was featured in the 1997 film The Devil's Advocate, starring guess who? Keanu Reeves. In the Matrix Hovercraft crew video here on this channel, I mentioned all the details we know about Ballard's ship the Caduceus, and that his character was present at the crisis meeting in the beginning of Reloaded, which was the first time in Roy Jones Jr.'s acting career that he had a role other than playing a boxer. At the meeting, Captain Ballard asked what they are going to do about the machine army headed towards Zion. When Morpheus requests that one ship stay behind, just in case the Oracle attempted to contact them, Captain Ballard points out Morpheus is requesting that they disobey a direct order. Ballard then agrees to volunteer his crew to stay behind for 36 hours, just to see what Locke will do to Morpheus for making such a bold request. Now, what we don't see during The Matrix Reloaded, that we do see in the Enter the Matrix video game, is that Seraph does eventually contact and challenge Ballard to a fight. This was done in the same way that Seraph required Neo to identify himself through combat before delivering him to the Oracle. In the name of consistency, Seraph first apologizes before initiating combat. Seraph abruptly stops the fight saying, "You do not truly know someone until you fight them." Ballard replies, "Only thing you know about me is, I was about to kick your ass." After Ballard completes this mission, we see the rest of his crew trying to make their escape during the Matrix Reloaded. This is the scene where the Smith virus copies himself over Bane inside the Matrix. Once the Caduceus makes it back to Zion, Ballard knocks on Neo and Trinity's door to deliver the message. The Nebuchadnezzar crew heads back to Broadcast Depth to meet with the Oracle. During the council meeting in Zion, the council requests that 2 ships go search for the crew of the Neb. Bane, now possessed by the Smith virus in the real world, tries to persuade his captain to volunteer the Caduceus, to which Ballard replies, "Shut your hole, Bane, before I put you in one." And that is the last time we see Captain Ballard in the Matrix films, because unfortunately Bane used their ship to trigger the EMP that decimated most of the Zion fleet, leaving them vulnerable to the approaching Sentinels, and Bane was the lone survivor of that attack. After The Matrix Reloaded, Jones Jr. released his second rap album in 2004 titled The Body Head Bangers, which was the follow-up to his debut album in 2001 titled Round 1. Between the Matrix filming in Australia, the different music projects, being a professional athlete in his mid to late 30s, and then eventually becoming a boxing commentator, Roy Jones Jr.'s professional boxing career began to decline in the years that followed The Matrix Reloaded, starting with his first stretch of 3 consecutive losses in his career. Yet he continued to fight hard in the ring and make appearances in films through 2018, which brings us into the exhibition match with Mike Tyson, who had retired in 2005. The announcement came as a bit of a surprise, with Mike Tyson being 54 and Roy Jones Jr. at age 51. This would have been a dream ticket at their prime in the 90s, but with both contenders being in their 50s, my first reaction was a general concern for their safety. The original date was pushed back to allow for additional training and to build a bigger draw for the event. They agreed on 8 2-minute rounds, and the fight went the distance, with each boxer putting forth their best effort until the very end of the 8th round. Honestly, the fight turned out to be more competitive than I originally anticipated. The judges ultimately scored this exhibition a draw. However, anyone who watched the entire match should tell you that Mike Tyson controlled the tempo for a good majority of the fight and clearly did more damage. At age 54, Mike showed that there was still plenty of iron left behind the punches of one Iron Mike Tyson. There were flashes of Roy Jones' previous Captain Hook style, but with age comes a natural decrease in speed, and it just looked like Superman couldn't move around in bullet time anymore. Tyson admitted that Jones caught him with one of his signature hooks during the post-fight interview, but Roy Jones Jr. also admitted that when Mike Tyson hits you, quote, "everything hurts." Jones said he wasn't satisfied with a draw, and Tyson already says he wants to go at it again. However, Jones Jr. also mentioned that he would have to talk to his family first before agreeing to a rematch. At the time this video is being recorded, it is unknown if these two legends will be stepping into the ring together again. Similar to Jones settling for the silver medal in the '88 Olympics, the judges scoring this 2020 exhibition a draw was questionable. If you appreciate this yellow-pilled content, be sure to share it on other platforms like Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, and remember, as one realizes that one is a dream figure in another person's dream, that is self-awareness.